Orpiche Sonkuche, thank you with all my heart for joining us tonight. I'm Caroline Putnam of the Reviveolution, all the way in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And we're so happy to be opening up virtual council tonight, where we'll be holding weekly interviews with authentic indigenous wisdom keepers and allies from around the world. So tonight we are passing the talking stick over to Grandma Kaariina of Squamish, Canada, and the keeper of the Rainbow MoonLodge. So we are extremely happy to have Grandma Kaariina here. She serves as an amazing intergenerational and intercultural bridge of wisdom keeping. And so we're extremely pleased to be speaking with you tonight, Grandma Kaariina. My experience with you, you're the hip grandma who seems to have an amazing knack for understanding and motivating the young generation while holding a very key space in supporting your own elders and the transference of their message. So I'm just going to pass you the talking feather now and let you take it from there to open us in ceremony.
For all our relations, Yumala, God, Goddess, Oneness, Creator. We ask for Shen for the clear light and for presence today as we broadcast to the Sacred Valley of Peru from Paradise Valley in British Columbia, Canada. And as we move from valley to valley, from mountain to mountain, we pray for all the ancestral spirits that bridge us from valley to valley and mountain to mountain. We pray that this ancestral spirit move through Kaariina and through Grandma Kaariina. We pray for the integrity of the Jaguar, for integrity and impeccability of our journey today. We pray that we maintain the words of how we describe each other, that we are intergenerational healers, that we are ancestors recycling and reknowing and remembering the one embrace, the una embrazo, that it just takes one embrace, one heart, one love, one light to bring a culture, a nation, a clan, a color, a creed together. And we surrender. So we pray tonight in this first initiatory journey, a journey of lifetimes, colors, cultures, and creeds. We pray that each elder and each young one that we meet, I, my young ones, and Carolina, the elders, that as we meet in this holy space, that we bring forth the sound, the harmonic, the resonance, and the frequency that offers the healing to the atmosphere of this planet. With the Egla, the consciousness of the vision of the Egla. With the Sachamama, the serpent of light. With the bear, the lodge of the mother. And with the hummingbird, that which gathers nectar from all the flowers around the world. Dedicated to Pachamama, to Tetswari, to the first fire. As we take our seats in our imaginal virtual reality council, we remember the Elders' Lodge at Sedona and the gathering of the eagle, quetzal, condor, medicine people and elders and grandmothers from around the world. As we feed this fire tonight with Kupale, we feed the fire of the heart and the heart's desire for a world of peace. Peace, 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 and peace. Sotim Kashla Wantanpanka, we have set this sacred space, remembering that when we journey with an elder and a medicine person, we journey with all the councils, circles, and lodges that he or she has ever participated in. A young one once asked, why is setting a sacred space so important? And my response is this, that when the hearts are open and the hearts are clear, that is the sacred space. That the ceremony has been passed on because the traditions have been forgotten. Because ego and personality gets between heart and heart. And so the space is set for ceremony in order to lay down the personality at the door of the lodge. In order to lay down the ego and get down on one's hands and knees and crawl into the lodge. In order to feel the chakras and the belly close to Pachamama. In order to feel the darkness of the moon and the darkness of the night and the darkness that precedes a storm. We here in British Columbia are doing much ceremony, actually. I've laid a new medicine wheel this weekend for rain, for our forests are on fire. And they're on fire because we inculcate a culture where there's so much argument about rights and wrongs and goods and bads. And people are taking sides. When we live in a sacred valley or in a paradise, we live in the valley where all the shadows of death meet us. So the shadows and the deaths of the four-leggeds, the creepy crawlies, the winged ones, the sounding ones, the singing ones, the insectos, the butterflies, the shadows and the death forms and the spirits of the antlered ones, the deer ones, the moose ones, the elk, those that died and perished in the fires north of Whistler and Pemberton, have been forgotten. But we in our medicine way, we pray on the riverbanks that their spirits may flow in the river of all lifetimes back to the blueprint of each and every one of those ancestral teachings. For each animal, each deer, each bear, each butterfly is a teaching that teaches the two-legged ones in its 400,000 years of evolutionary taking a stand for itself on the planet, that we need to get down on our knees and be humble today. And so my message today is humility. As a grandmother, I have continued my journey. I learn every day. I'm humbled and I do my healing work every day. And I've just gone through another series of initiations. I went through a series of initiations in Sedona at the Eagle Quetzal Condor gathering with our blessed abuela Margarita Nuaz from Jalisco, from Mexico. When she passed me the talking stick called the microphone on the stage with all of those other beautiful grandmas, I have to say there was a little stroke of lightning of doubt and fear of, whoa, my abuela's handing me this talking stick. Because what an abuela has touched and what an abuela has done is passed on in that talking stick. And so in the council way, that talking stick is crucial. When it's been loved and touched and created by elders and those that are committed to the way of the circle and the way of council, all of that experience is passed on. All of that love, all of that pain, all of that sorrow, that suffering and the grief, all of that potential for the creation of the world to be continued in a sacred way, all of that gets passed on. So in the way of counsel and setting sacred space, we pray and dedicate ourselves that we humble to be servants and to be channels and to be mediums of a healing consciousness, a consciousness that brings forth the best in all of creation and the best of all those who sit in council. And the best may be the darkness. So following that theme of humility, I just want to give you a couple of examples of what's been going on in North America with youth and elders. One of the things that I've occupied myself with today has been to read all my clinical observation sheets of my 5 Reiki level 3 students. And they finished all of those observation sheets. They had to do 10 to 12, some of them did 14, some did more, last fall. And I've finally gotten around to reading them and honoring them and realizing the sacrifice that they made and how it is to be a hands-on healer, and how it is to be grateful and how it is to be humble, how it is to end blaming and complaining and shaming, how it is to be grateful to say to a grandma, thank you for pushing me over my edge. So one of my students said it at least 10 times in 3.5 pages of gratitude to my teachings. At least 10 times he said, Grandma, thank you for pushing me over my limits. Thank you for pushing me out of my comfort zone. Thank you for pushing me. That humility, that gratitude is missing because we're missing the rites of passage and the initiations and the ending of stages of our lives. And our beautiful abuela, Margarita, has initiated me both at 55 and now at 65 and now at 67 to being an elder and to being a medicine woman. And she honors my school. And yes, I was feisty enough to hold a point of view that she didn't agree with, but we both of us got out of our right and wrongness, and both of us shed tears, and I realized I was there every time she needed to climb a set of stairs, that it was my strong hand that was there climbing the set of stairs with her. And this is what Loki does for me, that when I taught level 3 for 2.5 months with a broken left wrist, he tucked me in every night. Sarah massaged me after my bath. And beautiful Luba brushed the knots out of my hair. And when we have intergenerational healing, we don't have blaming and shaming. We don't have this conundrum that we have in North America. What am I going to do when I'm 65? Or the Beatles said 64. I know what I'm doing when I'm 67. I'm still rocking it. I'm still a superfood grandma. But I see in North America a deep grief and a deep loss. A loss for the initiation of humility. A loss for a rite of passage that requires young people to ask their villages and cultures to help them. So I see in North America a lot of pride and stubbornness that rises from a deep core distortion called self-doubt. Am I worthy enough to actually bring myself forward with all of my gifts? Am I worthy enough to ask my community for help? Am I worthy enough to take my medicine bundle that I've made in the forest of my life with all of my beliefs from my family that I've inquired and investigated and asked, are they really true? Am I honorable enough to my mother line and my father line and my grandmothers and grandfathers to say, I'm your next step and I need your help. I need you to fill my bundle with, for now, I need some pesos, I don't need any more quartz or cristales, but whatever I need some food, I've got lots of superfood. So as soon as we put that out there, the universe, because the universe is all loving and a friendly place, the universe actually gives us everything that we need. So hence I was delivered after I read Loke's gratitude pages from his observation sheets. I was delivered with the beautiful Mexican paella dish for supper and 2 almost ripe nectarines. And I'm being given an opportunity to give back to my students all of my love and all of my appreciation and all of my gratitude for what they've taught me. And in the hierarchical teaching structure, the way that education has been structured in Europe and in the agricultural systems and in the corporate world and in North America, there is a top-down. And we could say in a teepee that there is a top-down. That the spirit does come down and it descends through the top of the teepee. It does come down and descend through the top of the star formation and the top of the lodge. It does. We do call Temkashla. We do call the Holy of Holies. We do call Esraya. We call the Celestine ones to be here. We do call all of that because we need to remember we're part of a weaving of visible and invisible ones. And it's an ironic juxtaposition that many young people struggle with in North America. On one hand, Grandma, you're telling me I'm really important. You're kicking my ass. You're telling me, go climb that mountain. You're putting me on your back and telling me to swim off the edge of that playa into the Pacific Ocean with me. And then you're pushing me off your back and telling me to swim on my own. But then, 5 months later, you're telling me, don't forget, you're just a weed. You're a little seed. Don't forget. You're a little fluff of dandelion. Don't forget. So the young ones in North America and perhaps in Peru, but the young ones in the culture where there are villages, where there's a sustaining consciousness of the importance of sacred space and memory and storytelling around a fire, these young ones who get down on their hands and knees and join us around the fire and join us in the lodges, these young ones are recollecting that they're going to be old like Grandma. They are the ones who are going to help Grandma not only with a broken wrist, but someday climb a mountain. Because I'm definitely going to climb more mountains before I go to the other side. Or they're going to help me push off my canoe off the edge of the fast water. And they're going to watch me paddle my own canoe, one of the teachings of Grandfather William Commanda, guardian and keeper of 3 wampum belts in the Algonquin Nation. A guardian and keeper of the friendship belt that had just below the navel an indigenous figure reaching out to both French and English and saying, I'm your friend, and I was here. And that's why we call ourselves First Nations here in Canada and in the United States. So humility is a big lesson because all of these wampum belts and these teachings have been passed on with the intention to offer them only to those who are humble enough to hear, only those who are humble enough to ask to see, only those who are humble enough to say, Creator, I need your help. And so that first call to Timkashla, to Wankanpanka, to Great Spirit, and finish it's Yumala, to God up there, to the Father of the skies, to the cosmic source beyond all naming of father or mother. We're calling on help because we're honest enough to say that we've been el stupido. You know, Abuela, and Doña Leo actually, in another one of my experiences with another elder, she looked at me one day recovering from toxic poisoning from cockroaches in Cuernavaca. And I had gone up to her house in, I'm trying to remember what the name of her village was. But she put me to bed. They were preparing for a fiesta de Maria Magdalena. And she saw me, and she saw I was peeking my guts out, and I needed to be put to bed. And that's what grandmas do. That's what elders do. That's what medicine women do, you know? And she put me in her beautiful white bed, and it was surrounded by images of all the Catholic saints because there was no separation, and all of the Mexican teachers, the curanderos, and she was a curandera for the children of the village. And she put me in her bed, and she expected me to get well. And I did. I got well. And she looked at me the next night. She let me sleep all night in her bed. And she looked at me the next day and she said, "You can't go back to Cuernavaca." She didn't speak English. But she told her shaman son, tell Kaariina she can't go back to Cuernavaca. And she said, "I have more medicine for her." And I was in my stubborn stage. I was in my, because what had happened for me in her bed, what had happened is this deep doubt came up. Am I worthy of receiving this curandera's blessing and her total unconditional love? Am I worthy of being there and sleeping amongst the saints? What have I done to deserve this? And I felt this deep surge of doubt. And her shaman son said, "No, my mamacita says you have to stay. She has to give you more medicina. Don't worry about Cuernavaca. Don't worry about your friend. You know, you're not fully clear of all that toxico. So you have to lay another day in the bed of all these saints." And you know, that stubbornness came up in me, and I said, no, I can't stay. I have to go. But it wasn't stubbornness. It was a lie. The lie and the truth was, that was the lie. The truth was, I didn't feel worthy of her medicine. I honestly didn't feel worthy. And that's what I look for amongst my students. I look for the honesty and the humility to say, "Grandma Kaariina, I don't feel worthy of your teachings. You know, thank you for pushing me off the edge of the cliff of my life. Thank you for seeing that I could fly. Thank you for holding me to your highest, greatest potential, knowing that I am it. I don't see enough North American young ones surrendering. And so I feel great compassion for that. I have a lot of patience for that because I remember it wasn't too long ago in my 50s where I was with Doña Leo, and she looked at me, she said, "How stupido, Kaariina, how stupido." So one of the great teachings in the sacred space of lodges, circles, and councils that I offer to people is to gather and to look at each other in a circle and turn to each other and say, "How stupido." Just get over it. Everybody's stupid, you know? We have this primal brain, we have this primordial brain, we have this mammalian brain, we have this reptilian brain, and we have this neocortex that is higher consciousness. But, you know, we have brains that are stupidly wired for doubt, for fear, for rejection. And we have brains and nervous systems that are wired that in the medicine path, our job is to unwire it. Our job is to undo it. Our job is to get naked. Our job is to cook it until the seed sprouts, until the seed actually grows. And sometimes the young ones that come to us have been seeded on grounds that are malevolent. They're grounds that have had a lot of violence. They're grounds that have had a lot of abuse. And I say deep prayers and honor my ancestors in Canada right now. We've just finished 3 years of collecting 6,000 testimonies of abuse through residential school systems. And we're in I would say our second and third year of recovery from residential schools. And that abuse has been passed on because it's genetic predisposition and a weakening in the genomes in the next generations. And of course, the fire water has exacerbated it. Promiscuity has exacerbated it. Drugs have exacerbated it. The loss of sacred space and the loss of ceremony has made it difficult for elders to be truly held. In our own nations here in Squamish, there's an elder that's really struggling because he's not being held as a true medicine man. Because the temptation is money. The temptation is $4 billion for a natural gas pipeline. The temptation is to ruin the waterways and the house sound. The temptation is to have more festivals and ignore the 4,000 acres of forest fire burning. So the sacred space that we set as elders and medicine people are to help people bring back the priorities with great humility. If we don't have a tree, an old growth forest, if we don't have that, we have kids with asthma. If we don't have grandmothers who kick ass, we have young 19, 20, 21-year-old men who never become men. They stay puelas. They stay forever Peter Pans. They never want to grow up. They do like Michael Jackson, facelifts and crazy stuff. We don't want to be providers. They don't see the pride that my son has with catching salmon and giving his mamacita 15-pound salmon. They don't have that kind of pride with saying, Mama, I'm going to give you the 4th ice bucket that I've given you in the last 3 years to put more salmon in to feed your friends. They don't have that look of pride on their faces. They don't have that ability to see that they can guide somebody out on the northwest Pacific coast of Vancouver Island to take people guiding and to give them the thrill of catching fish that they can eat and provide. They don't study permaculture. They don't go to the community gardens and see kale in April and May that still grows in October. They don't help people who are homeless with gardens. So because we have not initiated those from puberty into adolescence, from adolescence into young adulthood, we've lost a culture. We've lost a culture that doesn't want to grow up. We've lost a culture that potentially could be indigenous. We've lost a culture that potentially could be Aboriginal in its remembering. And so that's the grief that we express in council circles and lodges. That's the grief of we who have recognized those who come into our fields and dance with us and do the moon dance and the sun dance and the earth dance and smoke pipe with us. We recognize those because they are the leaders. And so that's a return to a new world that requires paradise in a valley and sacredness in a valley and requires ceremony, and it requires kick-ass grandmas who take superfoods and travel in 5 months in 5 different countries and do counsel and have young people give us gratitude because we kick their asses instead of pouting. And yes, I do fire my students. I have this year, and for the first time in my life as a Reiki master teacher, I've actually fired a student. I told her at one time that I would fire her as a student, but I would never fire her as a spirit granddaughter. And then I realized she was sucking my roots. And energetically, I had to fire her and take my sword of light and cut the root so she could reroot to her own grandmother, who's since passed and now has helped her granddaughters. So it was a good thing on all levels. At that time, I was just wanting to have more clear space for the rest of the young ones. So, yeah, when you give an elder a talking feather, she knows how to talk. She knows how to fill the space. And one of the things that I wanted to share is the importance of health. And, you know, the grief that we're experiencing with the loss in North America of the indigenous cultures. All nations have been influenced by this. We have had an Aboriginal genocide, and it was calculated, and it was in combination with what Nazism did to the Jews in Germany, and there's a documentary that's available for people to see. It's important to live aware of shadow as well as the light. It's important. You can't see the lightning without the darkness. And so I really recommend that our listeners pick up that documentary where there is a very great espousing and honoring that genocide happens not only because we don't speak up. and we don't take stands. It happens because we collude. And why do we collude? Because we have genetic predispositions to weakness. Because we aren't genetically predisposed to enlightenment. Because we don't set our dedication and intention every morning to serve the Creator, to serve Timkashla, to serve Wankanpanka, to serve the medicine of the wheel. And so my young ones have come to me bowing down in humility, saying, help me. Some of them are German, some of them are Jewish, some of them are Russian Jews. They all come with a genetic predisposition to either stay stubborn and proud and reject the possibility that grief is their path, that they need to walk the grief of their ancestors, or they pretend that they need money and that money is the answer, or they're in reaction and they don't know why they're in reaction. Those are some of the clues, signs, and signals that if they're in the field of a circle council or a lodge, that they've come to bend down and be humble. And I insist that they do. And I give them 3 chances. And if they don't, then I ask them to leave. And I ask them to think about it. Not to go back to video games or pornography on the internet. I don't ask them to go back to what they were doing. I ask them to go sit, as all enlightened beings have done, in silent retreat at the roots of a tree. I ask them to go into the silence and to listen to nature. I ask them to tend to sacred fire. Sometimes 3 days, 3 nights, sometimes 30 days, 30 nights. I ask them, like all the masters and all the sages and elders have done, to take retreat. And then come back and talk to me with humility and see if the answers to my inquiries of are you ready, are you willing to be truthful, are you willing to be healthy, if they're willing to say yes. Once upon a time in the 90s, I asked a question. And it's really important for young people to ask questions. And I particularly enjoyed, Kaariina, your questions, your inquiries, because it tells me that you're on the medicine path. And it tells me that you're exploring and understanding the loss of culture in Peru with the Inca, with the Leca, with the Cuero, the Quechua, the Shipibo in the Amazon, that there is a loss of culture with the Coquis in Colombia because there has been a war of divisiveness that says, let's do drugs, let's sell drugs, let's make money. And so the loss of that culture is a deep seat to take when one becomes quiet and does a solitary path for a while. Because there is a loss to the world of those cultures. The Aboriginal genocide, who knows how many million people were killed in that genocide in the United States. We only have 6,000 reporting testimonials or testimonies in Canada in the last 3 years for the loss of healthy lives in Canada. My people, the Sami people, the reindeer tribe in northern Finland, Sweden, and Norway, we were invaded by Stalin and Lenin, and our children were literally taken out of the reindeer-covered teepees and put into uniforms and put into rectangular schools and told to follow a communist regime. And so there is a deep-seated grief in the root of these teachings that you're about to engage in this encounter of elders and young people, in this series that you're willing to participate in and to offer. And I would offer that young people too hide their grief. They don't know why they feel sad. They don't know why they feel depressed. They don't know why they go through these massive bouts of feeling lonely or lost. And here in Canada, we're promoting this thing called mental health, and unfortunately, it's pharmaceutically grounded, instead of taking people to the fields and to the forests and drinking cedar tea. So this loss is very real. I don't know how many more generations we will lose. But in the 90s, I asked the question, what is health? And I wrote a binder full of dividers. Every single divider had a title. And 3 years ago, when I did a cross-Canada tour, I realized I was living my binder. I was living my own prophecy. I'd asked an amazing, inspiring, intriguing, and intuitively great question. What is health? I knew it wasn't lack of disease or lack of money. But I really honestly didn't know what health was. And all of a sudden I realized through that binder that there were layers and layers and layers and layers to the answer. Mm-hmm. The final divider, and this is relevant to your question, was the word prophecy. Mm-hmm. That was the final divider. And in the last couple of years, what I have been guided to receive, and really truly guided, because I've been dedicated to youth more than anything else and the empowerment of women, is people give me these secret teachings. Mm-hmm. In 1991, I received this whole little tiny green binder, channeling from Archangel Michael by somebody in the 100-Mile House area here in BC. I had to look at a map to find out where it was. And it was a woman named Judy Darling who had been a CBC reporter in Ottawa. And she said, I don't know why this person gave me this binder, but having met you, I know you're supposed to have the binder. And I read it, and it was a gathering binder. It was a binder about full moon circles. It was a binder about the importance of gathering at every full moon and putting our heads together at the point of a star to dream the world together. And it seeded me. It seeded my soul for something that my ancestors 5 generations ago as a sun-mesh reindeer shaman had already seeded me. I was the one to wake up, to remember. Many moons later, several other things have been given to me. 3 years ago, one of my beloved Nikolai Walkley apprentices gifted me with another prophecy, a prophetic binder. And he looked at me seriously, and Garibaldi Printers here, and he said, Grandma, do you really want this? And I looked at the cover and I felt it. I wasn't taken by the cover, but I felt it. And I said, yeah, I need it. I need to read it. And it was a Dakota young man whose grandmother never learned English, who maintained all the ceremonies and the ways of the grandmothers in the Dakota territory, and said to her grandson, the only way we're ever going to defeat these white people is to learn what it is that makes them tick. I want you to go to a white man's school. I want you to learn business. I want you to go into a corporation. I want you to make millions of dollars, and I want you to tell our people how to do it. And she never learned English, and she did her ceremonies for her grandson, and her grandson wrote that document. Mm-hmm. And it was what she had asked him to do. How many grandmothers asked their grandsons to actually defeat a corporation by transforming it from the inside? Mm-hmm. Through prayer, through intention, through setting a sacred space from the grandson, wherever he was, through school and through the corporate world, to her in the Lakotas. So that was another document that was gifted to me. And I felt his anger when I read it. At first I felt all of his grief and his rage and his pain of the Aboriginal genocide. Fast forward. When I was first landing back after Sedona here to Gibsons, British Columbia, a woman who had danced the moon dance with us last year in Puriscal in Costa Rica came to us at the house, and it was going to be, and it still is, the Chicana Center, named after the owner's journeys in Peru. Chicana meaning the cross the bridge that crosses over between the other side and here and other cultures. And Brenda gifted us with this document. And it too is a document that is only circulated amongst certain people. It's a document written by what's called an Indian lawyer, a white man who fulfilled the prophecy that there would be white men who would return to the indigenous ways, and through that read the way in the white man European supremacist attitude law to find the loopholes, to use that language to release indigenous people from prison. And it's an amazing document, and it's guided by the sacred laws. And as part of the prophecies, one of the things that we have to acknowledge in the 4th round of the teaching in every lodge is that elders live by the law. Elders live by principles. When elders are too traumatized, they tend to tell stories about that are traumatic for me stories. They continue and perpetrate in the atmosphere, in the space between people. They perpetrate the victim, persecutor, rescuer. Or they perpetrate that good, bad, right, wrong. And that elder is not bad. That elder is sick in his spirit, is sick in his soul. And he's soul sick. And he's missing home. And he's missing sacred space. And he's missing ceremony. And he's missing beautiful ceremonies like our program right now. Mm-hmm. He's missing that. And he needs to be down on his hands and knees and cry again. And he needs to honor and acknowledge that we have medicine now. We have the medicine of Peru. We have ayahuasca. We have the medicine of Gebo Africa. We have the medicine of Iboga. We have the medicina of Peyote from Mexico. We have the medicina of the Amrita of yoga. We have the medicine of Amanita, the mushroom of my people, the reindeer people. But these people who come to us in this time are still stubborn and proud and still blame. And so they haven't accepted the passage into elderhood, into full elderhood of humility. They may have the stories, they may have the uniforms, the costumes, they may show up. But they're still toxico. They're still experiencing más grande toxico. The pura pecado is going through everybody. And it's going through the elders first. And they may not live to see a sober moment. Because if we're still emotionally toxic, still telling those trauma dramas and blaming, we are still not fully intelligent, not fully receiving what Simkashla Wakampanka wants us to receive. We still haven't fully grounded the Celestine prophecies. We still fully haven't embodied the star nations and the star tribes and the star elders that were meant to be. And so that's sad. And that's what I see some of our young ones here in British Columbia getting confused about. They're having festivals and gatherings and they're inviting elders. But I've gone to some of the elders' fires, and the fires, they're sloppy fires. Yeah. And they're beer cans beside the stumps of logs. There's no tobacco given me when I show up. And then when I say to them, you're in grief, let me hold you. Tell me who you're really missing. Who didn't love you enough? And they're humble enough to surrender. And they share, and I give them medicine like emotional freedom technique. Or I give them medicine to honor that their path is a path of grief, that they must walk that grief, but not blame. Because the white fathers and the red fathers all signed the treaties together. And those times are over now. We have to meet together in a new way. And the grandmothers are carrying the blankets now.
Yes, they are.
The grandmothers are carrying the sacredness of woman. The grandmothers are carrying the teachings of the womb. And so this is how I bring back the young people to me. I wait in a coffee shop just like I'm in here. And they show up and they sit opposite me and they tell me what's up with them. And they invite me to help them. And that's what I see as humility. Asking for help. The first sacred step. Not just in AA, but it's actually the first sacred step in every teaching. So, prophecy. I carried with me for the 5 months that I was on the road from December the 14th to the 1st of May, seeing the end of 2014 in Mexico and all the way to Sedona, I carried with me the Whirling Rainbow prophecy. And it's from Jamie Sam's book on the medicine path. And her grandmother Twyla of the Seneca, is a grandmother who passed several years ago. Last year, when I was at Gratify Festival, walking the grounds as a sacred grandma, I was invited to a cabin afterwards. And outside the cabin was a fire pit, and it had a lot of energy. And June, who was a holder and keeper of that sacred site, said to me that Grandmother Twyla's 4-day, 4-night ceremony at her passing in that Cherokee territory was held there. I mean, she was celebrated in the Seneca territory as well, but the Cherokee honored Grandmother. And so for 4 days and 4 nights, they kept that fire. And so I immediately jumped into the center of the ashes. And I felt on the soles of my feet the love for that grandmother. And I feel strongly that This is the humility that grandmothers need to honor grandmothers. The humility that elders and sisters need to offer elders and sisters. And there's a great loss for women who don't do that. And so my loss is in my own family. My sister hasn't got a clue what I'm doing. But my sister will know when she passes that I have prepared a portal for her of great compassion and great wisdom. So Grandmother Twyla, the Whirling Rainbow, I wanted to read this to you because I knew it would speak to you about this bridge that we create as rainbow elders. When the time of the white buffalo approaches, the third generation of the white-eyed children will grow their hair. They will speak of love as the healer of all the children of earth. These children will seek the new ways of understanding themselves and others. They will wear feathers and beads and paint their faces. They will seek the elders of the red race, and they will drink of their wisdom. These white-eyed children will be the sign that the ancestors are returning in white bodies, but they are red on the inside. They will learn to walk Earth Mother in balance. They will reform the ideas of the white chiefs. These children will be tested, as they were when they were red ancestors, by unnatural substances like firewater, to see if they can remain on this sacred path. The generation of flower children have moved through this part of the prophecy. Some have remained on the sacred path. Others were lost for a while and are now returning to the natural way. Some were disillusioned, have forgotten the high ideals that gave them life when their hearts were young. But others are awaking, quickening to the remembering. The return of the buffalo to Turtle Island and how the herds would once again be numerous. When the buffalo returned, the generation after the flower children, which is my children, I am one of the flower children, would see the dawning of the fifth world of peace. Grandmother said that the beginning of the fifth world would be like a wobbly pony being born trying to use its legs. The wobble would be felt by all on Mother Earth. Changes would occur in the soils and the waters. The wobble would create rolling emotions, feelings that would bring quickening and remembering. Colorful dreams would be brought into the sleep and the dream of newborn warriors of the rainbow, and they would begin to learn to walk in balance, fearlessly. The changes in Earth Mother would create fear in her children, which would later lead to a deeper understanding and a unity of one planet and one people. The secret of all of this time of the white buffalo, is that there would be sacred teaching shared with all races to those who are ready. When enough of the children of Earth are awakened to carry this responsibility of the teaching, the healing process for the entire universe will begin in full swing.
Hayaya.
Hayaya. So that was what I was carrying for the last 5 months of my travels and sharing every time I did Circle Counselor Lodge. And I also shared the Hopi prophecy, and I've been invoking the name of Grandfather Martin of Turquoise Mountain, the Hopi. And Adam Yellowbird told me that he wasn't well when we were there at the Sedona gathering, that he had been taken off his reservation and being put in a old folks home. And I thought that was really sad. And I had asked Adam a month before Sedona gathering, find a way for Grandfather Martin to come to Sedona, to come to the gathering. And I was so involved with my own 6 students and what I was doing that I didn't make the request later. But I apologize to Grandfather Martin for all of us not making sure that he got there. So one of the teachings in the prophecies of the Hopi, which was the Hopi pipe of peace is in the shape of a heart. And it was circulated, just like these secret teachings and these sacred laws. It was circulated, and it found its way to my teepee in the 90s in Village Cascade. And it was brought by a messenger, just like you. You're a messenger. I'm a messenger. My young people are messengers. We're all the seeds of hope. We're seeded through our red bloodlines in order to bring these sacred laws and prophecies forward. And so one of the prophecies that was circulated in our village was, these times are times when the river of life flowing swiftly. Jump in, but be aware with whom do you jump into that river. For those who cling and grasp to the shores will cling and grasp to you, and you both will drown. But if you allow yourself to be taken by all of those lifetimes to the mouth of the river of all time, you will be the voice for the mother, and you will speak into the oceans, and consciousness itself will reverberate to your sound and resonance, as a Kaariina version of the prophecy. So what I've learned about prophecy is that they are the beginnings, and messengers pick them up and become mediums and channels for the endings. And we actually can see as seers with foresight, because we hold that place of solitary times in the forest for so long, we can see where a prophecy is going to end up. And not very many people have that foresight. Most people are short-sighted. They want something right now. In fact, in the last 15 to 20 years, it's become even more about only right now. And right now can be big. In shamanic medicine way, it's big. Now is everything. But if you can't remember where you've come from and appreciated the lessons and give gratitude with great humility for your teachers, then now isn't as rich as it could be. And now isn't fulfilling the prophecy if you don't see that we don't have to duplicate the past. We can learn the lessons and change. But we have to build the momentum and create the quantum leap. You jump over that edge, just like my student said, "Thank you, Grandma, for kicking me over the edge." You know, I've been kicked over my edges many times, including being handed that microphone talking stick by Abuela. You know, that was a kick in my butt, because we had Abuela Laura between us. I wasn't expecting that. I was still really feeling into, well, when that microphone comes to me, then I was in my ego and my personality. I hadn't fully surrendered. And Abuela sensed that, so she passed that microphone on to me like a torch. It was like, I'm going to burn you out of your ego. You know, you don't have to think about what to say. You're a channel. Just be a channel for Great Spirit. So that's how elders do it for young people. And we do it for you because we love you. We do it for you because you are us. And you are from the past, and you chose to recycle yourself now in this elders revolution. And you chose to be elders in your 20s and 30s and 40s, when most of us are elders in our 50s and 60s and sometimes 70s. The times have changed now. It is a time of quickening. We need more of all of us awake to these intergenerational healings and the sacred space that a healing like this can offer to people. We need more of the realization that we're at a choice point. You know, how we spend our time every day, what we say every day, ripples out into this cosmic ocean. You know, what we worry about influences my abuela, so I'm very aware of doing my work for my elders. Sequoia, True Blood, for abuela. You know, I saw her in Dreamtime the other day, and I cried for her. I could feel something had happened for her. And I know that she's worried about something. And so I gave my strength through a sister who was holding her hand, so that we would potentize that medicine of the strength of woman and grandmother to grandmother. And so when we're elders and abuelas and grandmothers, and we have this kind of congruence with the sacred dream for the planet, and we hold this fire of Titwari, and we hold this, is so important for us to realize that we are being taken care of, that we are being loved. In the white culture, there's been a real forgetting of that. I've gone through in the last 3 weeks a lot of my mother's terror of what she must have gone through in order to clear the spheres that she created when she died. But I also had to recognize that she created all that, and that I couldn't rescue her. And I had to forgive myself for the regret I experienced for not going back up north from Mexico to be with her and let her to die in my arms. You know, I saw, and I had to take 150% responsibility where my family could have turned as a river in another direction if I had taken my stand there. And there were certain things that I didn't do, and I had to accept that 100%. So beyond guilt, beyond doubt, beyond that shame, is that divine humility. And it's a test. Humility is a great test. Accountability is a test. Responsibility is a test. The path of a shaman and the path of medicine is a path of testing. It's the path where I lay down my blaming and complaining about my sister and brother-in-law and what they did and what they didn't do. And I say, no, I didn't do this. If I had done that, they wouldn't have had to do that. And I had to lay down my complaining about the lawyers. And yes, my mother had hired a lawyer who was part of the Polish mafia in Sault Ste. Marie. You know, it was a beautiful, you know, like before she died, I was caring for her in Mexico. She looked at me and she said, Kaariina, I'm going to give you everything because you deserve it. I was thinking dollars and cents, right? Because there was a lot of money in the estate. We had a lot of family land and a big business. And it was like, well, take care of the business the rest of my life. And it was like, no, she gave me everything. She gave me the life. She gave me the medicine Buddha that she was. She gave me her prayers, her transcendental meditation mantra, her beloved Jesus Christ energy, her Holy Mother energy. She gave me all of that. And she gave me this Polish lawyer who was part of the mafia. So when you accept that talking stick and that walking stick and that staff of power, it's an enlightening moment. It's an enlightening moment to take a seat of sovereignty, to take a seat of self-reliance. Because how can others trust you if you haven't trusted yourself fully to step up? And if you haven't forgiven yourself fully? So my path for the last few weeks has been to really travel with the Laika, the mountain culture through Alberto Loldo's work of initiation, and to accept my initiation at this level as an elder, and to review all of that. And in North America, we don't give ourselves time to review. We don't do like you did. You went with your father-in-law and your beloved husband and your family in Peru, in the valley, to do all those ceremonies, And the women your age in California, where you left, what are they doing right now? It's July, it's August, what are they doing now? What clothing are they wearing? Are they wearing a beautiful lace shawl with beautiful beaded earrings? Is their hair long? Are they looking like a senora, Your eyes are shining with that love and with that light and the coca leaf. So, are they chewing coca leaves? I don't think so. So it's important for us to have this conversation today from Peru, from the Sacred Valley to Paradise Valley in British Columbia and Canada, to realize that in the valleys live all of those sometimes deafening cries of those who have gone before. And I learned when I was living in Jalisco, in Ajijic, when I first landed there with the curandero, I learned when I climbed a mountain that I ought to be taking sometimes 10 to 15 to 20 different kinds of herbs because I was living in a valley, especially in the fall. And he had his apprentices with him and the machetes, and he had gone up the mountain and he telepathically asked me to show him in the telepathic realm who my elder on the other side was. And I said, Sun Bear, a Chippewa holy man. Sun Bear is a Chippewa medicine man who's now on the other side. He carries much medicine, much teaching about living a balanced way. And so the curandero said to his apprentices, the senora is climbing up this mountain. I can feel her coming. And I want you to, each of you, use your machetes and put different medicines in bundles on the path for her. So she's going to meet them on her way up to where we are and leave them there, because then she'll climb to the top of our mountain, then she'll climb down and she'll take those medicines because she's a medicine woman. She knows what to do. And of course, he didn't speak any English. And I went up the mountain and I saw them digging out the roots of their plants with their machetes, and he just nodded. There was no need for anything else. So I knew that he knew that I knew that he knew that he knew that I knew. So this need for approval or recognition or acknowledgement, it just was like that. It was fleeting. Boom. I don't need 1,000 likes on my Facebook page, It was like, look, I get you. And that's what we're missing in North America. We're missing being gotten. And we're missing being cared for. We're missing, as we travel from one territory and one culture to another, we're missing medicine people and cultural ambassadors who say, well, now you're in the Sacred Valley and we're going to take you here where the Incas were. We're going to take you here in Mexico where the Toltecas are. We're going to a shaman in Mexico. So we don't have enough of that. I notice now in my Paradise Valley tenting ground that people don't even look at each other when we're walking to the bathroom. I saw something really funny the other day too, and I saw it twice, and I had to say something. So there's two male signature outhouses, or bathrooms. They're actually really quite beautiful bathrooms, and female bathrooms. And the female bathrooms were full up, and there were these two girls standing there doing what I call the pee dance, you know. And I said, well, just go into the men's bathroom. And they looked at me astonished, and so I went into the men's bathroom and I peed, and I came out, and I said, okay, if somebody's got to push you over the edge, I'll push you over the edge. Like, what happened to natural common sense? That why can't people just see what is natural and just do what is natural? If you have a new elder coming into your territory, go find that elder, give them tobacco, make sure they're well fed. What happened to that? What happened to taking care of other people's kids like they're your own kids? You know, I love other people's kids. I bless them all the time. I look for ways to support and to empower young people. When I was tenting up in the Squamish, and the chief mountain climbing culture is all there, and they're just crazy young people. It's amazing, and we made good friends with this couple from Spain who showed up at the yoga class as well. And they talked. They eventually talked, but the gift that they had, they weren't like wrapped up in their own little cocoon like these people are now. They were wrapped up in their remembering of the climb and what kind of climb were they doing the next day. You know, they were like figuring out the coils of rope and the grapples and the hooks and who were they going to hook with, and what level of advancement could they do while they were climbing. That culture, the mountain culture, is very humble, and it's humbled by death. It's humbled by the risk that they take. It's humbled by the chance that they take every time they send the hook up, every time they go up there. And at night they were really friendly. They all got together, they played, they sang, they kind of danced with their suppers. Everybody shared everybody's meal. Here they don't do that. They don't do that. These people are not risky. I'm risky. I'm making friends with the owners. I don't call that a risk. But that's the revolution. That's the evolution. That we have to revive that willingness to be a friend for world peace. And that's how grandmas and elders and grandpas kick people's asses wherever we go. And that's why the sacred space is so important, because it gives people an opportunity to be felt deeply. So I want to. I just want to thank the two medicines that I'm sharing right now. Is wild rose medicine for clearing, and I want to thank Terry Willard, who is an elder, a PhD naturopath, and he founded Wild Rose College in Calgary, Alberta. And his son is Yarrow, who has harmonic resonance on Vancouver Island. So those two men are the healing of generations of men. One man whose son follows in his footsteps, who is about the medicine, is the medicine for men for 5 and 6 and 7 generations. So when we say, may this be a healing for 7 generations, we mean it. And men like Terry and Yarrow hold that medicine. So I want to thank them. Sometimes it's easier for women to heal. I'm also doing a Respira cleanse, St. Francis Herbal Farm from Ontario cleansing, because we have through the valley smoke when the wind changes. We have smoke from the forest fires, from the Elako. And so I want to thank the provocateur and the beings that keep the soil nutrified and pure and clean and are seeding the medicine for 4 and 5 and 6 generations at St. Francis Herbal Farms in Ontario, because that soil becomes medicine. You could take a pouch 2 inches by 2 inches of that soil, and you could take it to your own garden, and it could be twice as big as a shaman's blanket. And you could take that biodegradable substance of soil and say the prayers and create a sacred space around that garden, that shaman's blanket, and that soil would become sacred. And then you could take the ancestral seeds that are non-GMO modified and spit on them and put your genomic endowment, your gift, all your experiences through your saliva onto that seed, and then plant that seed. And I where I passed that teachings on years and years and years ago about the squash, about the squash seeds, and you have one squash and it has enough squash to feed 10 families, or you have one cob of corn. I carried corn. Adam Yellowbird blessed me with blue corn last year. And of course, it's a prophecy about the return of the blue corn and the blue corn people. And I carry corn in my bundle, and I have it now on my medicine wheel and on my mesa, because people have forgotten the seeds are really the first currency. The seeds were the first form of exchange, and the corn came from your people, the yellow corn that reaches up to the sun. So it's really important to remember that this grief, because we have sunk our roots deeply enough into Pachamama, this grief gets stuck in this scarcity called I don't have enough money, or I'm not worthy enough. And it is a wound. It's an ancestral wound. In these sacred ceremonies, it's a way to heal and resolve the wound, and to spread the roots out deeper and longer and wider, and to start harvesting that which we give to the world. And yeah, for a while it can be money. I always say to the kids, wow, give me the $1 million now, I wait. I love pressing buttons about money, And I'm currently being pressed, with my own buttons around money. And then today I was doing my observation sheets with my students and realizing, of course, I'm going to give back to them tomorrow and make a request for a donation, for a contribution for all the work that I put. And I'm sure within a day I will have money in my bank account. And so the same thing when I do the completion for Sedona, there'll be something coming back. I have fundraising protocols that I've written several years ago that my mentor the other day said, finish it, be on the path of completion, write it, and send it to the corporate world where there are people living the natural way. And these people want to see the dissemination of the wisdom through the disillusionment of what keeps a corporation alive. And how do we build cultures in villages that are self-sustaining is just starting to happen on the planet. It's what I've observed in the last 15 to 20 years. A household that can be self-sustaining by creating a village, or by a village that creates households that are self-sustaining, where food is exchanged and love is exchanged, and children are cared for and old ones are taken care of until they're 109. And so that's my prophecy. I foresee that. I hold that sacred dream. I hold it like a nexus point on the planet, where there are these sacred points like Paralandra, like in the Sacred Valley, like in Ecuador, like in certain places with the Kogis, they're still maintaining those frequencies, although they're coming down and teaching. I feel the Kalpuli, where Abuela lives, is a sacred place. The Peace Village in the Green Mountains in Vermont with the East Cherokee is a sacred place on 5 acres. It's amazing what they've done. And they started with the landing of the motherships and the grounding of the wisdom of the elders, and the teaching of the Red Hat Tibetans meeting the teachings of the Red Ones called the Cherokee. Abuela starting a village in Baltimore in northern Quebec. It's amazing. I know there's a lot more. Findhorn is one, Damanhur in Italy. There's one in Portugal. There's several in Spain. A spirit brother from Mexico created a documentary called Land's Awakening, which I would recommend. And it was his tour for 3 years of finding all these different locations on the planet with communities being built around organic gardens and permaculture. And a lot of it inspired by young people in your age group, because they see that it's a fruitful path, that it's like my son being so proud of providing salmon. It's the young people can make the rite of passage through gardening and building village and community into being providers, and they can take care of the elders. And the young ones are going to come in with new genetics, and that's how the new race, the blue corn people, are going to come to the planet again. Hey. For all our relations. That feels like.
Gracias. That's what we're doing here in Peru, actually, working to build what we're calling the Tahuantinsuyo Templo, which is the Tahuantinsuyo is the union of the 4 directions, the union of the First Nations. And yes, just as that vision has been expanding, it's been letting us know that it wants to be an eco-community in which we each still hold private space and but we can come together and support each other in ceremony. We can support our grandfathers and our grandmothers, and support each other with organic food and land, and that's what we've been working here in the Sacred Valley. That's what actually brought me together originally with who's now my father-in-law, with Juan Gabriel, and now my partner in the Quero Nation. So I'm going to follow my abuela's lead for a moment and bless the medicines that I've been holding today. This is Mamita Coca, the sacred plant of the Andes, and she brings so much wisdom and clarity and messages from the mountains without doing any sort of research or asking questions. There's information that we just receive, and it's really nice to sit with her as we're in this ceremony today. And then this other medicine that I'm holding today is over 260 sacred waters from around the world. And as we are water carriers, we shall also be drinking the waters to stay on the same vibration, to continue a living prayer that all waters may be united and that all people have beautiful, healthy water to be putting into our system, redefining our genetics and our DNA to be of the earth wisdom and the cosmic wisdom. So, and I'm just going to recap a little bit of what I heard my grandmother speaking of today is for us not to be afraid to meet our own death, to keep doing the deep spiritual work that's necessary for us to be the living prophecies that are taking place right now, and to come in humbleness. To come in humbleness to our elders, come in humbleness to ceremony, to sweat lodge, come on our knees to Mother Earth, and come back to that wisdom and come back to that strength. And not be afraid to be being pushed over our edge, but enjoying it, loving it, inviting it in, and saying thank you to those who are doing that and helping us in that part of our journey. And not being disheartened or afraid when we recognize that some of our elders are still living in that cultural wounding, but to use discretion to be there and to help pray and to hold space for those people who are still in wounding, intergenerationally, with elders, middle generation, and young people. And rather than worrying, changing that into prayer and space. And as she speaks about the prophecies of the Whirling Rainbow, I was really delighted to hear what she was sharing in this message too, that we are the merging of the nations now. And that we're redefining the decisions of the white chiefs and the leadership roles of all chiefs. And coming back to earth, coming back to wisdom, coming back to that strength, and coming back to our grandmothers and grandfathers who are holding that space currently, bringing in that wisdom, calling in that wisdom, and stepping into those roles, and stepping into those new generations of wisdom, knowing that we too are taking those roles as grandfathers and grandmothers, as elders, even though we haven't had proper initiations in our generation. Calling those initiations in, calling in those ceremonies, and calling in that wisdom that we need, recognizing how the initiations are coming now in a new way. And being able to do that deep inquiry, those deep, profound questioning of ourselves and our motives and our intentions and our values, and being able to step into that higher integrity in all actions and all times, and really recognizing the importance of health in that. I love that she's the superfood grandma. We love the superfoods, all of us. So I absolutely agree with that note that health is so important. This is the straight genetics, the DNA that we're receiving from the earth, that they're all filtered with chemicals. What are we receiving? We're doing the spiritual work, but we're just continuously putting on a veil. So staying in deep connection with what's organic, local, fresh of your area, what medicines are of your area, is just wisdom and information more than we can imagine is receiving. Just like in this moment, in all these messages that I may be able to repeat that I've heard at this moment, but the infinite messages that we're receiving actually from Grandma and from her experiences, and the energetic downloads and the transmissions that we're all receiving by sitting in silence in this council space and respecting the power of the talking feather, and hearing and listening and waiting and just receiving. So thank you, Grandmother, for all that you have shared with us today. My heart is delighted and overjoyed, as I'm sure is all of the audience that is here. And We look forward to learning more about the paths and actions and wisdom that you have to share. And we look forward to hosting you again in council space and sharing some of your teachings to those who care to join and to receive. And so thank you so much, Grandma Kaariina. Thank you, Apukuna. Thank you, Mountain Spirits, Pachamama. To the two suns, to the Mother of the Moon, to the stars, to all the ancestors who are here, to all those ancestors who have laid these paths before us to bring us to this virtual council moment, and to all of those guardians who are here with us, guiding us and bringing in the wisdom. And thank you so much. Hayaya, Grandma. Hayaya.
Hayaya. For all our relations, darling. Mwah.
Mwah.